It isn't often that you have the opportunity to interview your favorite cartoon character, but today I have the honor of doing just that. Samantha is a singer, a songwriter, and actress. She's worked in TV, film, commercials, video games, music, but she is best known for playing the iconic 80s character JEM from JEM and the Holograms. Please welcome Samantha Newark.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm great. I am really, really good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to have you on my show.
It's just so lovely to be invited. Thank you. From the Zoom, the chat of the Zoom. How cool is this technology?
I know.
Did Synergy arrange this?
Synergy arranged this. Totally. This would never happen without
Synergy. She's
Synergy.
Gone rogue. I don't even know what's happening half the time anymore.
She was true magic. And it's so funny because I feel like we're finally starting to see some of those things that were on JEM and the Holograms actually be used now.
Yes.
Because we've been talking about them and fantasizing about them. I think we fantasized about them a lot in the 80s.
Yes.
All the cartoons had holograms and this and that, but I think I've only really seen people try to use them in the last couple years.
It's bizarre, right? It's suddenly like you're hearing holograms in the news, and yeah, I mean, we just kind of took it for granted as a sci-fi thing back then, but it is. I know that Christy Marks incorporated a bunch. She did a lot of research into holographic technology, and I guess the people are named after some of the founders of this technology in the show. I'm trying to remember exactly, but there's a little legacy with that with Christy Marks.
Oh, that's so fun.
Which is pretty interesting.
Yeah,
fun, and now it's all coming to life. Yeah, right.
Totally. So we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about a lot about JEM because so many of us love JEM. But I just wanted to start off by saying that this is a metal show. I usually invite heavy rock, heavy metal, a lot of iconic people who many of whom are from the 80s, not all.
Which I'm sure I'm like huge fans of their stuff too.
I'm absolutely certain you are. Yeah. But a lot of them are also fans of yours. And in fact, my very first interview was with this amazing musician, Brit Lightning of the band Vixen, who I'm sure you have heard of.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And so she was my very first guest, and Vixen were one of my favorite bands. She's a newer member, but she's been in the band for many years now. And we were talking about, now mind you, I should let you know if you don't know, Brit is actually, she was like born the year that JEM premiered. So she grew up with JEM. Like
she was like late to the party.
Late to the party, but found the party because she knew it was the one worth being at. Whereas I would say probably 10, 11. Yeah, I was getting that age where I probably shouldn't have been watching JEM, but like, what was going to stop me doing it? Anyway, so what was interesting is, so she's this amazing musician. She's in this like legendary band. Yeah. She's done a lot of cool stuff even before Vixen. But I was talking to her, and she was talking about some of her influences. Now, obviously, she found like 80s metal, and she wasn't of that either, right? Because I kind of around the same time. Right. And she goes, "Oh, and I remember when I saw JEM," and I was like,
and you're like, what?
I was like, whoa. And it was a big deal for her.
Yeah.
And she wanted to cite it as a musician. And to me, that made me feel really good too. Cause I'm like, am I, sometimes you feel like, am I the only one that still secretly like loves and watches JEM? I'm not. I know I'm not now. There's tons of us.
Adults are binge watching with cocktails instead of like eating cereal, it's like
true. Yeah, it's true. But it was just so cool. And she wasn't the only one. It's usually the female guests. Yeah. But I've had other female guests where we've either talked on camera or off, and they're like, yeah, JEM was so huge. And what's really cool with Brit is she ended up joining Vixen, which we all thought when we saw Vixen, we were like, oh my God, it's JEM and the Holograms for real.
Yeah, crazy, right? I mean, that was
so much like you guys.
Quintessential 80s, and they're so talented. Yeah, that's crazy.
Amazing.
I need to follow her on Instagram.
You do. I will.
Like, give her a little.
So talented.
Yeah.
It's just so. It was just so cool to hear her mention you, because I was like, okay, like, I know I love JEM. I know a lot of people do, but when a musician can like cite JEM in the Holograms,
yeah, it's had such a reach. I remember back in when they did the I Love the 80s Strikes Back, and they were interviewing Pink and the Donnas and just a bunch of people, and they were like, oh my God, I love JEM. We used to act out JEM on the playground, and wow. Yeah, it's been really fun actually over the years to see the celebrity culture. I don't even want to say celebrity culture, but the musicians that have really made names for themselves doing what they love were influenced by the show. So that's always so cool.
It's such a special thing. So we're going to talk a lot about that from your personal perspective, as well as just, nerdy questions that every fan probably wants to know. But before we do, I feel like in order to really understand JEM, because to me, you're not a voice actress or an actress who just played a role and then moved on. You really embrace JEM. This is really a part of your life. Yeah. And so I feel like in order to understand JEM and Jerica, I really want to understand where you came from and what you were doing before you auditioned for that role. So what was really amazing about your career is you started professionally at such a young age. How old were you when you professionally started working in the entertainment field?
Well, I got paid $35 to sing somewhere. So that would be a professional gig. And I was 7. And we immigrated to Southern Rhodesia back in the day from England. And my parents took me to see this little girl sing, Lena Zavaroni. And she was 11 at the time. And she'd been on a talent show in England. She was from Scotland. And this kid could sing amazingly. And she kept winning this she kept winning this television talent show, like kind of like American Idol, but tiny in England. And anyway, my parents took me to see her, and something resonated so hardcore in me. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I don't even think I realized that I could even sing, but I got a record of hers and learned every song of hers and started singing. And it's a long story, but I eventually started singing at talent shows, and my dad started managing me, and then I started getting paid for it, and it just kind of was off and running. It was so strange.
So it feels like you were very self-motivated, that there was just something inside you that wanted to do this, and your parents recognized that.
Yeah, they really did. I was lucky in that sense. I mean, if I'd been like a gymnast or because a lot of people said, maybe you didn't have a childhood, and isn't that wrong that your parents pushed you to do it? But if I were a talented kid, I think in any other arena, I was being encouraged, and they saw a talent in me very early on. And I feel so lucky because I couldn't have booked my shows and done what I did, and
right. I mean, it always takes a huge sacrifice from the parents.
It was huge. Yeah. My mom was the one that worked, and my dad, having taken it all on myself with my indie music, as far as, everything that you have to do, which ties into my love of my roles as JEM and Jerica. It's so similar to what I have to do in my real life, but my dad just booked me at all these shows, and everything was handwritten then. Like I found he passed last year, and I was given like all of these just all of the stuff that he'd done for me over the years, like these hand typed letters to the Johnny Carson show and Merv Griffin, and he was out there busting his butt for me. So yeah.
That's amazing. So Samantha, are your parents, are they in the entertainment industry, or did they?
No.
So they just really just saw something in you and said, we're going to figure it out together.
Yeah. I mean, my dad was a champion ballroom dancer, but that was in his teenage years. It wasn't really showbiz. And then my mom dabbled in showbiz, singing, and she was a ballerina actually with the Festival Ballet in London. So I have the arts. I have artistic people in my family, but nothing in the industry. I mean, he was flying blind, and I'm amazed.
With no internet or anything. No, really just figuring it out.
Just figuring it out, just on the phone calling people and writing letters. And, I have a daughter that sings. I'm sure that went over really well, but he was very tenacious, very, very tenacious. So,
that's so amazing. Like, you guys were like the dynamic duo, and you just did it together. So when I was reading up about you, you did a lot of things at a very young age, including getting record deals and that. How old were you the first time you had a record deal and cut a record? And what kind of music were you playing back then?
I think I was 8, and I did a single. So it was a little single, and it was country western. So I sang an original song that a producer had written for me named Jimmy Jimbo, and then I sang another song called oh my gosh, please, I'm trying to think, Tammy Wynette. It was something from Tammy Wynette. I can't even remember the name of it now. It's been so many years, but yeah. So they thrust me out on a tour, and I toured all over Africa in a tour bus with a bunch of other people that had deals and records, and and there I was doing my shtick at like 8 years old.
Were you, I
like
feel
crazy.
like in the 80s, there were, I think we were coming off of like the Jackson 5 and there were other young artists. So were you taken seriously as a young person, or were you treated like, oh, she's so cute and, you know, just let her do her thing and that?
I think there was a little of both, but I think that they did recognize that I had some talent. And it was strange because I had gone to see Lena Zavaroni, and it was at this beautiful, huge theater in Africa, the Seven Arts Theater. And within a year, I was booked at the same theater.
Wow.
Doing my thing and singing a lot of her songs. And I kind of became Rhodesia's answer to Lena Zavaroni. So she had moved on and she was back in England and, you know, being a huge star that she was. And they kind of adopted me as like, you know, the up and coming Lena type prodigy child singer type of thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Were you so driven that you didn't, because I'm imagining if you're doing all these things, you have to rehearse a lot, you have to think about costumes and everything. I can't imagine that there's a lot of time for just sitting around and being bored like most kids. Were you just so driven that you didn't think about that? Or did you sometimes wish that you could be like in the Brownies or whatever it was that the other girls were doing?
I was actually, I think had it not been for our traveling, I mean, I was born in England. We went to Africa, and then suddenly it was like, we're going back to England, and then we were going to America. But my parents were very good about trying to keep my sister and I was in the Brownies, and but it just kind of got disjointed because it was like, oh, I guess she'll be in Brownies in America. We'll try that, you know, because I was always moving, kind of like people always asked if we were army brats. So it was like, no, that's all my fault. I'm the family business, you know. I was kind of the family business since I was a kid. So
That's
yeah,
amazing. That's
but
amazing.
they really did try. Like they put my sister and I skating, and yeah.
Was your sister also in entertainment, or was she the child that had like kind of?
No, she was a trooper. She was the one that was asleep on the couch in the dressing room while I was out there, you know, singing. So yeah, but she had a love. She was very talented with skating, so my parents tried to encourage that. And,
oh, that's great.
yeah.
So and I don't mean to minimize your childhood because you really had quite a career as a very, very young person. But I know that by the time you were about 10 years old, you were opening for acts like Eddie Rabbit and other big, I mean, maybe the younger people watching this don't know who that is, but I certainly do. He was major when I was, and I spent a lot of time.
I love A Rainy Night.
Yeah, great
song. I know, great songwriting.
Did you understand at that young age, like what a big deal it was to be on a stage with those folks?
I think I did, especially so when I'd come to the States, I got signed to ICM, which is kind of like William Morris. It was a very huge agency, and they didn't quite know what to do with me, but they put me on the state fair circuit. So I was opening for Pat and Debbie Boone, Eddie Rabbit. That stretch of the Ohio State Fair was amazing because, I mean, there were people that I knew, iconic people like Dolly Parton. I watched her. You know, I was backstage and there she was. And so I was kind of getting a sense of like, this is a big deal. And I do remember a weird incident where I was walking to, I was in the backstage area and there was fences and there were fans for the show up against the fences. And as soon as they saw me, they wanted my autograph, which I thought was the weirdest thing because I was like, but all these huge famous people are here. Like, you don't know me. I haven't even been on stage yet. You know, I'm just this child singer that I'm, you know, and they were grabbing my arms and, you know, it was the weirdest situation. And I thought, wow, the show business thing is very strange. Like they haven't even heard me sing yet. What are they doing?
And little did you know that for years and years to come, there would be people like me going, Samantha, oh my God, you know, like that would become a big part of your life, really.
Right, but at least you know my work. So,
I do know your work. That's true.
Yeah.
I've seen you and I've been watching you for years, so I guess that's the big difference.
That was the difference. Yeah, it was so strange. But I guess in answer to your question, that was a strange moment of like, wow, I'm in this world here where this seems to be what I'm doing backstage here is very important to people, and there are all of these very famous people. And I think I probably started to get it, you know, like really get it, because before then it was like, oh, I love to sing, get me out there, you know, just getting out there and singing. But it was the business part of it, and the all of that. I hadn't had something that big profile, that high profile before. So that was kind of the first time.
So you, during those years, you did a lot of different work, stage work, acting in that, in addition to being a musician. I know you played iconic characters like Orphan Annie, you played Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, but your most iconic character was yet to come, and it was a few years later when you played JEM and Jerrica Benton. And I wanted to know, how old were you when you auditioned for JEM and Jerrica?
I was 18.
18.
I was 18. And for a long time, I wouldn't say that. A long time, there was a time when I was really trying to get a record deal in LA, and I thought it's the, because the gatekeepers, you have to be like 21. And I loved so much being JEM, but I felt like if they found me out, then it would just be the kiss of death. So I kept it quiet for a lot of years, and people didn't know. And then finally, I was like, this is insane. The record business is ridiculous, and I just want to do what I love, and I want to go where the love is. I've talked about this to a lot of the JEM fans before. I was like, there was just, why wouldn't I want to open that gate up to people that appreciate what I do, And so it was a big turning point for me, and I don't regret it, it's been the best decision I ever made, because I truly don't care anymore. It's like, especially since the business has opened up so much, like the old record label days, nobody wants that anymore anyway, really. You can carve out a beautiful presence for yourself as an indie artist, and so many people do, and so many people are thriving just doing it themselves. And I love that so much. So that journey was just like, wow, okay, I'm going to embrace the love here. And I so relate to my characters. I mean, I got to live out my rock star fantasy as JEM.
So much of your life is so familiar and matching.
It's so, yeah, it's like life imitating art imitating my life. It's so strange. Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk more about that and, kind of your relationship to fans and the significance of that relationship. But the actual audition yourself, when you auditioned for JEM, had you already done voiceover work? Or was this your first time doing voiceover acting?
I'd never done animation. I think I did a public service announcement, for local radio or something like that. But I left an agency and signed. My agent, who I was with at this bigger agency, left and started her own boutique agency and opened her voiceover department. So I followed her and just got kind of thrown out there as just auditioning for things. And JEM was the first animated thing. And I remember getting the call for it. She was like, Sam, there's an animated series, a cartoon, and they're all rock stars. And I was like, oh my God, that's so perfect. Yeah, I'm so excited. And they're gonna audition you for a bunch of different roles. It's very female driven. So there are the good girls and the bad girls. And, so be there at like 1 o'clock at Wally Burr Studios on Hollywood Way in Burbank. And I auditioned for Wally Burr. And I think I auditioned for all of the holograms, probably. Maybe I don't remember, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure I auditioned for all of the holograms.
I feel like your voice is so sweet. I feel like it worked for any of the holograms, and only for Misfits you probably right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you do kind of play to type. You have your strengths, and you have your niche and things that you're good at. And although I've done some voiceovers, some bratty teenagers. And
have you? All right. Yeah, I have to look for those
commercials. Yeah, which are fun. But God, nobody can play a brat like Patricia.
Classic, really perfect.
Yeah, amazing.
So the audition, so you went and you knew these folks who had opened this boutique because you had a relationship with them. You auditioned for JEM.
Yes.
You felt like I got this, right? This is like this.
No, it's the strangest thing. No, and that happens so often. You go and audition for something, and sometimes it's really hard, especially when you're doing voiceover. You're literally standing in a booth by yourself with the copy. If the dialogue is with another person, sometimes you're not even getting the read of the other person. You're just taking a beat and letting it go by and then reacting to like no dialogue whatsoever. I can't remember if that's how it went down. I probably was reading with Wally. Maybe he was reading the Misfits parts, or who knows, I don't remember. But yeah, I remember leaving and just like I didn't know. I couldn't didn't have a sense of if I'd done a good job, and I wasn't that confident because I was very confident with my singing, but voiceovers was a new realm for me. So I left going, okay, we'll see. And most of the time you don't hear anything. If you're lucky, sometimes you'll get feedback, you know, they loved you, but they went in a new direction or whatever they say. So I actually went to Colorado and then got a frantic call from my agent because there were no cell phones back then. Saying, finally got a phone call from my agent saying, you have to come back. You booked JEM, you booked the show. And I was, oh my gosh. Wow, that's cool.
So at that moment when you auditioned as the voice of JEM, which is what you ended up playing, JEM and Jerica. Did you realize at that moment that there was going to be so much music in the show, and that also that they had already cast the singer to play your role on the
right song? So I kept my audition sides, and I still have them, and I wrote a little note on the top, must talk to Arlene, who was my agent at the time, Arlene Thornton Associates, must talk to Arlene about, you know, doing JEM singing. So they must have told me the singing is, we're not dealing with the singing today, or whatever they said to me, but I didn't realize that it was already cast in New York, and they were matching our speaking voices to our singing counterparts. So on my little script, I have like, let's talk to them, which is my dad. Something my dad would have taught me, like, you just go ask them what they're, you know, so funny. But
you know, it wasn't until maybe like around the time, because you and I have met, we got to meet. So amazing. I think it was, I want to say like 5-ish years ago. I lived in LA for a couple of years, and so many amazing things, including seeing Vixen for the first time, happened like during the 2 years I lived there. And I got to go to this cool event with you. And I have to say, it wasn't until around that time that I realized that you actually weren't the singing voice, because your voice is like match perfectly.
Yeah, they did an amazing job. And I've had to put like videos on my YouTube channel because, you know, mad props to Britta Phillips, like, and she has her own huge following from JEM for her contribution, you know, and she's also a voice actor. So it's like, you know, people just assume they did a seamless job. They were very tricky back then. They did those kind of things a lot in the 80s, you know, where nobody knew.
And we weren't supposed to know, right?
We weren't supposed to know, right? But as the internet happened, and, you know, people start asking questions and wanted to know, like, who are these people that were a part of the show? And then it was like, it was done separately, and we never met each other.
Really? You never met each other?
We have now, but it was two whole separate machines. So when I think it was like 2000, I started Googling JEM. I just Googled it one day, and like all of these web rings came up, and these email lists, and these fan sites for it. And I was new to the internet, so I was like, oh my God, whoa, like, wow, this is amazing. I was so shocked. And then it wasn't until about 2003 that I Googled Britta, and I emailed her, and I was like, hey, we've never met, but I just wanted to say hello, and isn't this wonderful? I don't know if you've Googled JEM lately, but you really should, you know? So yeah, and we actually met in person in 2010 at a JEM convention. Which is so lovely.
That's amazing. And by the way, if anybody hasn't, if you Google Britta, she still sounds like JEM. Like I think of her not too long ago of her singing a JEM song, and I'm like, she still has that like bright, energetic
she does
voice. Yeah, it was super fun to find.
I'm glad I didn't have to sing those high notes. Oh, really? I had to do a lot of that. Britta and I talked about that because I did a lot of session work in LA, and it was like, oh my God, what key is this in? And you know, they don't care. They just write it, and it's in a great pop key, and then suddenly you're like belting your brains out, and you know, doing things with your voice that you didn't even realize you could do.
So let me ask you some specific questions about you playing JEM. So I've, I inhaled the series when it was new, and then every so many years I go in and like watch it again, right? Just like if I've never seen it before. First of all, I'm always surprised about how many of the songs I remember, like truly remember from A to Z.
Yeah.
There were like I feel like there were 100, I can't remember the exact number right now. I knew it.
Yes, people have thrown
something
crazy.
There's like 67-ish episodes, and there's approximately like 3 songs per episode, I would say.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So there's a slew of songs, and it's really surprising that I remember them all, but they were also really well written to be like catchy and fun and memorable. And they were short enough to work in the show, but long enough to feel like a full song.
Yeah. And Bryant, I don't know how she was able to write such iconic pop pieces in a minute. Like, she had no time. It's like, and they're super catchy, super memorable, and both the Misfits and the JEM songs, you know, whatever team you like best. I like them both, actually.
I do too. And sometimes I like the Misfits a little bit more, and sometimes I like JEM a little bit more. But my favorites are actually all JEM songs. So
what are your favorite ones?
Okay, so Like a Dream.
Yes.
I've Got My Eye on You.
Yes.
And the second song that was ever on the show,
Only the Beginning.
Only the Beginning.
That's actually
my favorite.
Yes,
like, that's my most favorite. Yeah,
me too. It's just got such a great build, and it gives you the chilly wills, and
it does. It's great. It actually could have been the theme song for the show.
It could have. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think it's one of the stronger ones for sure.
Yeah. So I had a couple questions for you about playing JEM and Jerrica. Actually, I have several questions. The first thing is, even though I've watched it lots of times, and actually most recently when I watched it, I was trying to figure out, I think of JEM and Jerrica as 2 completely different people, even though I know that they're the same person. But I think they each have such a distinct personality and such distinct voices. And I was like, even this morning, I was trying to listen again. I'm like, did Samantha intentionally do different voices? Because, you know, everybody in the world is supposed to think they're 2 different people, except for the few people who know.
Right.
And I felt like you did definitely do something different for each of them. This is what I think, and I want you to let me know if I'm right or not.
Sure.
I think for Jerrica, she was always like a little bit softer and a little more, not whispery, but like, for lack of a better word, just a little bit more gentle and soft. Like, definitely the girl that worked with the foster kids, and that kind of tone. And almost like apologetic, for lack of a better word. Like, it was always very soft and like that. Whereas I felt like when she turned into JEM, it was a little bit more like, let's do this, we're gonna go, and it had more energy. It was she wasn't like deep or hard or anything, but definitely like more like shoulders up, and like, we're gonna go on stage and throw on a show. Am I kind of right?
Yeah. I mean, it really was written that way. Jerrica was the Starlight mother, you know, and always trying to help with the kids and get them on the right road and help Laura and all these people. And JEM would get to just walk out on stage and be fabulous JEM, or she'd be like, let's throw a benefit, you know. So they were very different in that way. And I think Jerrica was more vulnerable because she was constantly trying to figure stuff out. she was confronted a lot, and she was the manager, you know, so she was very confronted, and I think that made her a little more vulnerable and angsty and a little more stressed out than JEM. JEM just kind of got to be fabulous and be hit on by Riot and Rio and, you know,
everyone,
everybody.
So when you were developing these characters, and you were a young person, this is the first time you were doing this in a big way. Was this something that the director just said, listen, I want you to play these 2 girls, even though they're the same person and we all know it, differently? Or is this something that you had to develop on your own? Like, how do I find a voice for Jerrica and a voice for JEM where I don't sound like I'm playing 2 distinct characters, but they each have different energy? Like, what was the process for you back then?
It had a lot to do with Wally Burr. It really did. And it was, you know, scene by scene, basically breaking it down and just sort of figuring out where she was at emotionally and where JEM was at. And, you know, I mean, he was very hands-on, but but he also let me fly, and he also let me try things. And, but he was just a great director. I feel so blessed to have gotten to work with him, because I know a lot of the talent from JEM has said, oh God, it was just such a taskmaster, and we were there for like so many hours, and, you know, we were on these other shows and we were there for like 2 hours and then smoking cigarettes and leaving. And it wasn't like that on JEM, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And he was very specific. So it had a lot to do with Wally. It really did. keeping us all wrangled and breaking it all down, and scene by scene and line by line sometimes about what was the intention and what were we doing, because I mean it was such a wacky show. There were so many situations going on. It's like
it really was.
Yeah, it was campy and ridiculous like cartoons are supposed to be, but then there would be these incredible, beautifully written, poignant moments that were such a joy to dive into. Like, what a gift to be able to do that in a cartoon. I'm still kind of blown away at some of the episodes that really are moving and beautifully written, and don't talk down to kids and have such an emotional depth.
Well, I think that the storylines are ones you could follow as an adult too, because it was really like a soap opera. It just kind of
soap opera for kids.
Soap opera
totally.
For kids.
Yeah.
It's still very watchable as an adult, not just as somebody who's a fan of it as a kid,
right?
Later, but really good. And when I went to that event that you were at, Christy Marks, the creator and writer, was there, and she said something, and it just never. It was probably in all the taglines, but it never occurred to me as a kid that she was tasked with creating an action adventure show for girls. And
yes,
what it was.
Like, wow, it was.
I always thought of it as like a follow your dreams, a music,
right.
Care about other people like they did with the foster kids. But I never realized, even though I knew it was happening, that it was action adventure, and they dealt with bombs and fires. Crazy.
Everything.
Episodes.
Rock and roadsters hanging off the edge of the cliff, like every episode.
Totally. It was really like a credit to her to be able to. You were being asked to do too many things, and she made it happen.
She made it happen, and then gave it like this beautiful personal feel. And I remember when I auditioned for it, and also when I was working on the show, Wally was always he didn't want cartoony. He was like, we want the kids looking at you like you're their friends. You're their older sister, their older brother. They want to be able to look up to you like you're real. He wanted very real reads. He didn't want it cartoony, although there were some very cartoony moments. Which how else do you play it? Yeah, exactly. Like capers. People have asked me like, what would be a good mashup for JEM, and I was like, oh my god, my favorite cartoon growing up was Scooby-Doo. So I was like, because it was adventures, it was ridiculous capers, and a team working together. So I think that would be a great mashup.
So funny. That is so funny. Yeah, no, I think they did a really beautiful job. And sometimes you watch it and you're like, wow, they would never do this in a cartoon now.
No,
no. I mean? Everything's
everything's so which is kind of a shame. I'm a person that's so not easily offended at all. And I miss those times where you had just freedom to express. And I know some things obviously have to change, but there was a lot of freedom there, and they didn't micromanage what we were doing in the sense of it wasn't put through a million focus groups, and it wasn't like everybody was sort of allowed to create because they were hired for their talent. And that to me is a great formula. It really is. And I think people are missing that. That needs to happen more. It needs to happen more. Everything is just so like, then you lose everything. You lose the magic.
The charm is definitely gone.
And I think that's JEM has that in spades. It really does.
So when you were playing JEM and Jerrica, did you feel like you were playing two different characters, or did you have a way to balance the two of them?
I kind of had to be cognizant of it. JEM just had a bigger presence, I felt, and Jerrica was more behind the scenes. JEM was the rock star. JEM was the rock star. So in that sense, there was just a little more of a presence and a little more of a command, and just all of that swagger kind of thing, but not in an aggressive way, but just it had a little more of that than Jerrica would have.
I think synergy was a part of that, because I think if synergy wasn't a part of it, if it was more like maybe like a little bit more like the movie where she's more painting herself and saying I'm JEM now, now I'm Jerrica.
Right.
There would have, I think that we would have maybe known a little bit more about like, how does she feel? What's the difference? Does
What's
she
the
talk?
difference?
Does she share it?
Yeah.
And I think because Synergy was there to make that transition for her.
Yeah.
It just, they're always, so I always wondered, like, do you feel like I'm, you know, in the booth playing Jerrica, in the booth playing JEM, or, you know, it's like, they're the same person.
Same person. And also there were moments of I think this was written in the script too at times where she felt like a fraud,
right?
You know, and she was afraid she was going to be found out, and she didn't want that, but was like thrust into this situation where she was trying to protect Synergy and protect all of this and raise money for whatever special needs
on her. Oh my God.
charity was happening at the time, and she didn't want her secret found out, you know. So, but there was an angst, and you know, she was a good girl. She had integrity. She wanted to do the right thing, and then I think that was the through line with Jerrica and JEM, and where she was conflicted, and you know.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to my next question. So when I watched the show as a young person, I saw it in a very simple way. It was like, this dude Rio is like two-timing both of them. Like, that's how I remember it, years and years.
Right.
And then I'd watch it as an adult and I'd be like, was that really how it happened? And then when I watched it most recently, I was like, you know what? I feel bad for Rio, because he was trying so hard to do the right thing. So I was just wondering, you're playing JEM and Jerrica. How do you feel? Like, there is definitely conflict, and Jerrica is very straight with the audience and with her friends, that she doesn't want to have to tell this lie, but for various reasons, they decide that it needs to be a secret that you mentioned. How did you feel, and how did you approach playing her with this conflict? And like, did you ever, as Samantha, feel like, why doesn't she just tell him? Like, what would, you know, like in the beginning, like,
yeah, that probably even came up in the sessions. I could hear like Patricia being like, oh my God, just tell him, you know, just tell him. But we needed the tension, obviously.
The tension for the show.
Yeah. And so it was very cleverly written in that way. But yeah, I feel sorry for Rio, because he knows something's up. He really does. He's not stupid. I mean, he really kind of is, but
a little bit. He's a little bit.
He's naive, I would say, not stupid. And and it's all just like smoke and mirrors, and he cannot figure it out. But he's not happy, and yeah.
Yeah, it's just an interesting one that I think we all kind of are like, oh. But that's what kind of gets you back there and keeps you watching. And
yeah, exactly. And if it hadn't been Rio, it would have been somebody else. I'm sure if the show had continued, Christy has said that she would have had to tell him, and he would have become an ally. But then there would have had to have been another person. And I mean, she was trying to keep it the secret from the Misfits and Eric and all of that. And she's actually talking about writing another AI nemesis for Synergy. So somebody that would be opposing Synergy, you know, which was such an interesting thing. I wish that she had had a chance to explore that, you know, just would have been so cool. What we could have done. Places we could have gone.
I feel like let's make that happen. Why not?
Yes.
An audience for it, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So there was another thing that came up. And that was the theme song change. So there was an original theme song, which I'm fan of original theme song, like the most
team original theme song too. Yeah.
And then they changed it. Do you know why they changed the theme song? Because the second one, frankly, it's cute, but it sounds like a commercial for the dolls. It did not.
I think it was
the show, and I remember it. I think I remember it from the doll commercials. Do you know why they made that change?
I don't know. I actually don't know the real reason. Probably like, let's switch it up, let's keep it fresh, you know, is probably what I'm thinking maybe happened. But yeah, I think it was a doll commercial, and they were like, let's, and I'm like, when I heard it, I'm like, no, they can't do that. What are they doing?
I actually blocked it from my memory. I think it was more just like it came up again. I'm like, why is it that song?
I know.
Theme song. So I told you what my favorite songs are. What are your favorite songs from JEM?
So I love the original theme song, absolutely. And it's so tied in with the first time that I watched JEM on television. I got my butt out of bed like 7 a.m. And when you're 18, you really don't want to do that. And I did. And I was shocked, and in the best way. I was like, oh my God, because I'd never seen it all come together. You know, you do your part and your lines, but I had never seen it with the animation and then the music and the theme song, and it was, so I will always have that memory of the original theme song and how it impacted me, and it was so wonderful. And then Only the Beginning, I think, is my second favorite, maybe even my first favorite.
So
I don't
good.
know, I love it so
good.
much, gives me chills. And then oh gosh, there are so many. I like Misfits in Hawaii. And there were just so many good songs. Twilight in Paris, and yeah. Sorry, I've got hairs everywhere.
It's probably just that
Trying
one
to be
hair.
right. It's a rogue.
I feel like it's all of them, but it's really just the
it's one rogue hair thing happening. Yeah.
So so JEM was like your full-time gig. Were you doing other shows while you were doing JEM, or did that come later?
I did. I guess everybody has to have like a horror B movie in their arsenal, but and it's not really horror, but it was marketed that way, but it's really not. It was originally called The Butterfly Revolution, and then they changed the name to Summer Camp Nightmare. So I booked that while I was working on JEM, and I sang the theme song and on an animated feature film called Project Echo, which has quite an amazing following. I think they're actually coming out with a Blu-ray version of it pretty soon. So I did that while I was doing JEM, and I was in a girl group. We were supposed to go to Japan and open this theme park, and it was called the American Train, and we made an album. Wow. And then the whole project just folded for some reason, and we never went, and it never happened. But yeah, and I just did a ton of commercial stuff that you probably wouldn't even know that it was me, but just all kinds of radio commercials and jingles and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of stuff that wasn't JEM.
Right. And I know you played a couple of characters on Transformers. I think that was after Wrapped.
It was actually it was during the run of the show. Yeah, I think it was 1986. It was the original Gen 1 Transformers, and they just had me come in and guest on a couple of things, and I wish that I'd gotten to record ensemble with the Transformers people, but I didn't. But like Sue Blue and I were both on Gen 1, and actually I played Ariel, who is an Autobot, and she's in love with Orion Pax, and then Orion Pax transforms into Optimus Prime, gets killed by the Decepticons, and my character gets killed by the Decepticons, and she gets built into Elita 1, who's played by the voice of Synergy, Maureen Aragon.
So funny.
So it's like this,
like little JEM legacy made its way
into like the yes. And I play a pink robot, of course.
Oh, I love that.
The pink ponytail. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about we had started talking about this a little bit, but your connection to fans. So I imagine, and you had sort of alluded to this in the early days, you kind of wanted to keep your career separate, like you're a musician trying to do musician thing and other work, and then there's this JEM thing. But at some point, when you started digging around and like figuring out what a huge fan base this was, you started to make that connection to get again. Was this because of the internet? Is that what made it possible for people to figure out who you were, and to for them to let you know that yes, we do want to connect with you, we do want to learn about you as a person?
Yeah, it was absolutely, because otherwise, I mean, I did get fan letters back in the day. My agent would give me fan letters that the people had sent to the agency when I was doing JEM, but then it was off the radar, obviously, for a while, and I was just out there playing every club in Los Angeles that I could, and writing music and doing session work and all kinds of stuff. But it wasn't until the internet. It's changed so much. It has been such a blessing, for artists like myself that could find our fan base, without having to go through these corporate gatekeepers. We could organically do it ourselves, and it's changed so much for so many indie artists. It really has. Ones that are way more accomplished in their game than me at this point even, but I just remember Annie DeFranco, just how that all started, and it's it's awesome. It needed to happen because artists need to be able to control their content. And there, I mean, props to the big players out there, the Mariah Careys and the, you know, the big game players, but you don't have to have that, you know, to have a genuine experience of doing your music and having it appreciated on the world stage. I mean, even doing like Zoom calls that go out internationally. And I mean, that's just like, the world is right at our feet. And it's just having come from, and you know what I mean, even though you're younger than me, having come from so little technology, like video games were like Pong. There was nothing.
Literally like two little lines and like a ball and we were so excited to play them.
Seriously. And to be able to go from that to like, oh my gosh, I remember when I got my first mp3.com page and I was on MySpace and fans were emailing me on MySpace, and I was building like my little following, and then they would come to my shows in LA because I'd have a place to, you know, tell them where I would be. And it's been amazing to see. It's amazing to see the journey of that. I'm so grateful that I was able to experience that, and I'm so grateful that I Googled JEM one day because I have like such a genuine love for the show, and I was like, where are all the people from, where are my castmates, like what, you know, I just wanted to know, and it just opened up so much. So cool.
When did JEM start getting embraced by like the cons? Because I feel like, I imagine I only started going to the Comic Cons more recently, to be honest. Now you have things like JEM and things that I'm more into. But I feel like originally it was probably meant more for the traditional like comic book characters, superheroes and that. At what point did you start to see JEM and like My Little Pony and other things, probably from the same era that you're known for, start to really get embraced by this, like the Comic-Con
culture? I think that they just started to really take note of, you know, the power of nostalgia. Like people want to connect with meaningful things from their childhoods. It's very, very has such a pull, and such a genuine pull. And yes, we're dazzled by new things and wonderful things that come along, but there's something about those properties from when you're a kid that you're like, oh, you know, that just, I mean, I got to meet the voice of Scooby-Doo when I was doing JEM. And I had that moment, I think I cried because I was like, because he did the Scooby voice, and I just was like, I can't, what? You know, like I grew up with Scooby-Doo. It's like so huge. And so I think from a business sense, they saw the power of nostalgia as well. But I remember just being, I didn't even know what the Comic-Con world was. I really didn't. And then I got invited to one in New Jersey back in like 2004, and it was a Star Wars convention. And Mark Hamill was the guest of honor, and there were like, I just remember being there, and there were like thousands of stormtroopers, and I was there at my little booth, and I was like, it's so lovely to be invited, but I'm very confused, like, you know. But then I realized like they grew up with JEM, and they were so happy to see me there, and I was like, oh my God, okay, I get it, because I'm a Star Wars fan too. I grew up with Star Wars. But yeah, I had no idea. Now, of course, the pop culture, the Comic-Con world has become so mainstream now, which is so fun. It's so fun. And it's a bummer that we've missed a year.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you know what? It's nice to be a part of that. Cause like I said, like I've always liked all that stuff, but that was never my world until more recently when I started seeing the characters that I grew up with, that I identify with, you know, like for me, it was JEM, She-Ra, and He-Man. Those are my, and Transformers as well, but those were my big three
big three ones. And then see all these people like dressing up as their favorite character, and it's so sweet. It's so sweet. And I think people are just really wanting to connect with a part of themselves that they remember from a sweeter time. You know, we all do that. The world gets so complicated, and growing up, you know, who wants to adult most days?
I haven't officially started doing that yet.
Yeah, I feel this. Yeah, I'm fighting all the way. But yeah, it's I call it the love job, because every time I've gotten to go to a show, fans just pour all this love at me, and I get to give it right back, and I feel like I get to hear their stories. And I've heard so many like really poignant stories of people's childhoods, not realizing the reach that JEM was having. You know, they had like a runaway episode and a hotline, and kids like almost broke the phone number because so many kids called, and just had such a reach that I didn't even realize was happening. I don't think any of us did. That it was, people have said my childhood was really hard, and JEM was the only thing that I looked forward to, and you guys were my friends, and you guys gave me hope, and you taught me, you gave me a moral compass that my family didn't give me. And just, I mean, these are the kind of stories that I've heard along the way, and I feel like I get to be custodian of something really precious. It's people's childhood. It's their childhood. It's more than just a cartoon in that sense, you know.
Well, you had said moral compass, and what I think is really interesting, and I'm very defensive of the cartoons that I grew up with. I think that, you know, I think they sometimes get a bad rap. I should just tell you, I worked at PBS for a while. So I worked on some of these really beautiful educational shows, and we were really thoughtful about what we said and what we didn't say. And then I think when you're in that world and around those people a lot, there's this there's the other side of like, oh, those shows where they were selling toys. And I was always like, oh, no. Like, I those too. Like, those are good too. I worked on any one of them if I had a chance, if I wasn't like 7 years old or whatever, you know. But there was a lot of those shows, JEM definitely had it built into the show. Like those storylines were built into the entire show. But even shows like He-Man, they had the little moral at the end. I remember Geo had it at the end. And I feel like all those shows really, they might have been selling toys, but I think when all was said and done, I think the people who worked on the TV show are not the people who are making the toys. I think they're two different groups, right? And so I always felt like those little morals, like I liked those, and they did actually stay with me, and I do notice them, and I pick them up more in JEM than anything, because it's not so much somebody saying them at you, but like you learning it through the story. What's your take on that? Do you feel like it was coming from a genuine place, those storylines?
I do. I think it was a different time back then. I felt like adults seemed to owe it to kids to be a voice of guidance, you know. So I don't think anybody ever really questioned it. It was like, of course there's a, you know, make sure you don't get in a car with somebody, and doing the right thing makes you a superstar. And just all, I loved that, because kids are vulnerable. And actually, it was such a time back then of latchkey kids too, although JEM was on probably in the morning. But yeah, I mean, I felt like JEM, all of those shows back then seemed to feel a responsibility to look out for kids and to do a great job, you know. And they didn't talk down to them, and they gave them guidance, and I love that. I love that about JEM.
Yeah, I love that about JEM. I love that about all those shows. Maybe it would seem hokey to kids these days, but I thought it was like a really, I mean, it was a big part of what we were watching as kids. An 80s kids life, you know, or
exactly.
How old are the fans who approach you? What are the age groups of folks that are coming up to you?
You know, it's so all over the spectrum now. Like, it used to be 10 years younger than me, so
it would have been my age.
Right. So it used to be that pretty consistently for a while, and then it was on Netflix, and oh my gosh, I was meeting 14-year-olds at shows that would be in full JEM cosplay, and they were like, my mom, or they'd just find it on Netflix, or their mom had turned them onto it from, you know, the DVDs or whatever. And so the demographic, these little kids, teenagers, it was all over the spectrum. So I don't think it really has, I mean, it has its diehard fans that grew up in that era, but it's found its way through. Now it's on Tubi. So I'm sure there are a bunch of people. Yeah, it's been on Tubi for a couple of years, and it was on Netflix for like 3 years before that, and then Discovery Kids. And so
that's great. And are you finding the one thing that did bummed me out about the second opening is because it was talking about like, I think it said something about being a gem girl or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were male fans.
Yes.
And maybe
a lot of male fans.
Talk about it. Maybe they didn't talk about it at school or whatever, but
right.
How many, do you feel like you have a like a respectable number of male fans that approach you about the show?
I swear to God, it's 50-50. The
Is it
fans,
really?
yeah. And I was surprised by that. I thought mostly it would be girls.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's so many boys, and they're so funny. Like they'll come up maybe with their girlfriend or their wife, and they'll be like, I like your show. I watched it, and I'm like, your sister probably made you watch it, right? And they're like, yeah, I really liked it. You know, it's so great. Sweet, yeah. Great. And then there's obviously a big gay cult following. Mm-hmm. You know, the drag queen culture has done so much unbelievable homage to JEM. I'm just like, I'm not worthy. It's a lot to live up to. You know, go to a show, like, what do I wear? I'm the voice of JEM, and you see these drag queens that are just taking JEM to like the 100th power. It's so good. And these cosplayers, because people ask me, why don't you dress up as JEM? And I'm like, because they got it. Like these professional cosplayers, and you know, the drag culture and everything. It's so fun. Oh, JEM has long legs and white sparkling tights, you know.
It's all glitter and hair.
It's all, hair like I've never seen. You can see it coming from like a block away.
You're like, that one's for me. I just know. Like when you're on camera, you're like, that one's mine.
So true. It's so true. So true.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So speaking of nostalgia, and I'm not trying to be controversial here, but we waited our whole lives for like some like JEM to come back in some way.
Yeah.
And then somebody was like, we're going to make a JEM movie. And I was so excited.
Yes.
So excited. Yeah. Now, I definitely am an animation person. Like, I'm always going to like something in animation more than live action, but I want some. I don't care. Just give it to me.
Right.
And I actually went to, I think it was at one of the Comic-Cons out on the West Coast. And I got to meet the costume designer for the JEM movie, which was really cool. And it was, it was really cool. I was excited.
Yeah.
And I was worried, but I was excited. And then I think I got swept up in some of the not so positive
the Twitter
and I was
death
like
spiral.
And then it just even seeing the ads, and I actually love the actress who played JEM and Jerrica because she was on Nashville, which is one of my
that's how I knew of her.
She was amazing, and
she's wonderful.
The only other show I can think of that had so much great music like JEM had, where you're like, how do you
was Nashville? And I live in Nashville.
I know.
And I was a fan of hers and a fan of the show before she even got cast as JEM. So when I found out who it was, I was like
excited. I was like,
oh my gosh.
Love her. She can totally sing. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
I will say, when I saw the ads for the promos or whatever for the film, I was like, oh, it feels too modern. And this is I watched it last night.
Did you really? You won't offend me.
I was like,
you won't offend me. I've heard it all.
So I was like, you were in it, which we'll talk about. And so I was like, I need to see it. I need to finally see it. It's kind of been on my list to do, but then I was like, I'll just watch.
So you hadn't seen it at all?
No, I wanted to see it when it came out. I was excited, and then I kind of heard some things, and I saw the ad, and I was like, it's not set in the 80s. So that right there, to me, the fact that it wasn't set in the 80s is kind of like what makes it hard.
Game changer. Yeah.
Sex and the City always talks about how New York is the fifth character.
Yeah.
I think the 80s was like the first character.
It's
but I will say this. I finally watched it. So for anybody who didn't watch it, it's actually a lovely movie. Watch it. It's super cute.
It's sweet.
Samantha. It's very sweet. And I think they did a really, really good job in like, this is what happened in the series and how do we make it more modern and that like, I don't want to give anything away for anybody who hasn't seen it, but I think they did a really good job with that. But for me, I think it was like, if it had been a movie about a girl trying to do a thing, I would have been like, oh, such a cute movie, go see it. But because it was like JEM,
because it was JEM,
there were so many things that were not what I consider JEM. Like synergy was a little different, and there was just different things. I think they did a good job overall, but I didn't watch it till last night. And I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it was all because I was talking to you today. So I want to talk to you though about it, because I feel like you have a great appreciation for the film and that it meant something to you to be invited to be a part of it. So let's go back. I'm sure you've told the story many times now, but
Okay.
for my audience, how did you get to be involved with the JEM movie?
Well, I was living in Texas, and I was actually touring with this amazing Pink Floyd tribute act. We were like playing all the House of Blues venues, and I got thank God I checked my Twitter messages, because I was like never on there. And it was John Chu, and I'd seen somebody had sent me a link with them holding the dolls, saying we're going to do a JEM movie and we want to invite people to be a part of. And so anyway, he reached out to me and asked me. He said, I've got an idea of what I'd like, how I'd like to include you, and would you be open to it? And at the time, I don't know what the movie's going to be like. I know it's John Chu and it's Hasbro, and I'm not going to say no to JEM, so I said yes, and then went to LA, and they treated me like gold, and they were so lovely, like the sweetest people. I ate lunch with John Chu. He like jumped down and sat next to me, because it was taking forever. I was in makeup from like 11 in the morning till like 5 at night, which is so common. Yeah. So I was like, and he felt bad, so he sat next to me. He was like, we're gonna do this, I promise. It's like, but I was just so happy, because the whole day on the set was the montage scene with Juliette Lewis and all the girls.
Oh, that's
so
like one of the most fun scenes in the movie.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sitting there and I'm just watching Juliette Lewis work, and I'm watching all the girls work, and I was just happy to be there. It was so fun. And then finally we did our scene, and I remember that he wanted me to be, actually he originally asked me to do the backstage Britta's part that she had with the backstage manager. Mm-hmm. And then I said, I just want to let you know that I have pink hair. Is that going to be a problem? Because JEM's got too many people with pink hair, I don't know. And he's like, oh, okay, let's. So he had to think about it. And then he came up with the hairdresser. So in the montage scene. So that's how that happened. But, they couldn't have been more lovely. And I thought the girls were so talented and so precious, and they were just adorable and lovely to me. And I didn't know what they were going to do with the movie. And it was actually, what was really tough was when the hate train started on Twitter, and they were like, there are no misfits and there's no holographic technology. And I couldn't say anything because I was under a non-disclosure, but I toured the misfit set, because that was one of the first things I asked John Chu. I was like, you're gonna have misfits, right? Like, Samantha, you can't have JEM without the misfits. And I was like, oh yes, I was so excited. And he's like, we'll give you a tour of the misfit set, before you leave. And they did. And when all that happened, I was like dying to say, but I saw the set and it's so cool. And I couldn't say anything. So it was just, and before I knew it, it had just gone into La La Land crazy. And I do understand, I completely understand the fans, so like you said, like so looking forward to it for so many years, and then not seeing enough of the nostalgia that really, really meant something to them. And I think maybe they should have done an animated reboot.
Give us something, or with the animation, it's so much easier to do whatever you want, right? Because you have to believe so much
exactly more. Or just go completely campy, like the Spice Girls, like ridiculous campy, get a bunch of drag queens, just have it be
campy. I would have enjoyed campy, even though I take them very seriously. But depending on when I'm watching it, sometimes I see it as a little campy, and sometimes I can take it seriously. And depends on your mood, the episode.
It all depends on the mood you're in. So I agree with you. I think it was a really sweet film. I loved the music. I thought the music was beautifully done.
Very good, actually.
It was great. And a movie has a bunch of girls in it that are not taking their clothes off, and they're all together for common good. I'm like, you know, I have no problem with that. That's a good message to send to kids. Is it completely JEM? You know, not the JEM that we remember. And I know that there were Easter eggs, and it was so awkward because John Chu was like the loveliest human, and he grew up with JEM. He told me,
he wanted it to do as well as anything else.
He did, and he's like, he said that a lot of the things that he wanted to do, they wouldn't give him the budget for. He wanted the Misfits to come on in the motorcycle, you know, guitar motorcycles, and just all of the stuff that he wanted to do, and they were like, no. So it was the Blumhouse paradigm, which has worked really well for other films, but I don't know if it was the best fit for this, you know. But yeah, so it was what it was.
I think it also goes back to what we were talking about earlier, whereas like maybe there was more trust in the 80s where people could just come in, and maybe John in the 80s could have just done what he wanted and said, we're building the motorcycles that look like cars. And then you know, we would have gotten those little things that are really significant.
And he said synergy was going to evolve. Like this was not, he hoped to do 3 films.
It definitely felt like
it was going to evolve.
Like it was like the origin story, so to speak, of what happened. Because at the very end, you feel like, oh, okay, now I wish the people could have just kept their mouth shut so we could have seen the second movie.
Right. Yeah.
So we could see what like
it already
really
wrote
happened.
The second one, and I know it was hard on a lot of levels because I was rooting for the fans to have JEM come back, you know, to have a reboot that was super successful and everything, and it, you know, you just never can tell. It is what it is.
Fans can be tough, but it was also that expectation versus what we're getting now.
Yeah, but they, you know, I always say that JEM is like a multiverse, and there you've got the comic books and you've got the doll culture, because so many people love the dolls, and they're the doll designers, and they make their own custom beautiful clothing for the JEM doll lines. And then we have the action figures just came out, and we have the Funko Pops, and just all of these, and then there's the movie, and then there's the cartoon. There's something for everybody, and then there's like all the drag culture too. I mean, there's literally something for everybody if you like JEM.
I have to say, I think the dolls are more beautiful now, the ones that are coming out now that are, I would say, more collectible.
Yes, they are.
That I would let a child play with them, because they're
collector's dolls.
Quite expensive, I think.
They are, they're for the doll collector community that like just has such a reverence for doll collecting.
I feel like they fly off the shelf before I even have a chance to even.
Right. I hear you. I'm like, can JEM get a doll?
Can JEM get a JEM doll, please?
I've been gifted some of the dolls from some incredible fans. I'm like, wow, because I really wanted the classic JEM doll, and a bunch of fans got together and they got me one. I was like, oh, wow.
Speaking of dolls, I'm sure you saw that show, The Toys That Made Me, or whatever it was called.
Yes.
And so, you know, we watched the Barbie episode, first one I watched, and I was shocked, Samantha. These women were evil. Like, I
know, they sent in spies.
Oh my God. Like,
it was cutthroat.
I was very aware of JEM, right? JEM was my favorite. I was also a Barbie girl, and they didn't trick me. Like, I knew that JEM was JEM, and that Barbie and the Rockers was trying to like get a piece of the action. But like, I was shocked with these women, and
they were like JEM's cover band,
like literally like curling their mustaches, talking about how they saw JEM coming and that they were going to get in. And the line that really killed me was like, we want people to think that like JEM copied us or something to that.
Yeah.
And did you guys know, like, when you're in the voiceover booth doing the voice, did you have any idea that you were such a threat to the Barbie people?
No idea. And when the show ended, I don't think any of us really understood what had happened, other than we're all showbiz veterans, and we were like, well, that was a wonderful run, but I guess it's over, you know. Like, you don't know, they don't tell you that type of thing. It was only years later you're like, seriously, that's what kicked JEM off the air? Are you serious?
So I read, and I don't know if this is the information that eventually got to you, but that it was that eventually the doll sales weren't doing as well as they had previously in that. But to me, that was always a surprise because I didn't realize that these shows were made to sell toys. I watched He-Man, I watched She-Ra, I watched JEM, and they had toys, which you want when you love a show. I didn't realize that they were kind of meant to be like the other way around, as
toy commercials.
These folks were concerned. But it really bummed me out because I thought, I feel like it coincided with the time where girls my age and our age, really, we probably had a certain number of Barbies, like 4 to 8 Barbies to our collection. And eventually it got to like where the girls are stop playing with them at a younger age, and maybe they're not playing with them at all. I feel like looking back, like this is sort of what was really happening, is that the doll play was just going down a little bit at that time. I personally don't think it had anything to do with JEM or people.
They got on to like the Easy Bake Oven or something. They were like,
oh yeah, but
I don't know.
For me, I don't know. It just bummed me out that it was so, because at some point the show becomes way more than the toys.
Yeah, and in fact, we were doing incredibly well in the Nielsen ratings, and then for it to end because of the doll sales, that just ebb and flow. But at the end of the day, it was to sell the dolls. So it was disappointing. It was, but
it had a good
hey, here we are today, still talking about it. So we did something right.
We're not talking about the Barbie movies. So even though I love Barbie,
there we go.
We're not talking about any of their stuff. But I do.
Although I grew up with Barbies, I have to say, I loved Barbies. I used to beg my friends to play Barbies with me, and a lot of them were just not into it. They were like, "Really?
Oh, really? Oh, I was so lucky.
You and I would have been playing Barbies. Oh,
totally. We could still play Barbies.
We should. I'm totally. What's the sweetest thing? One of my sweetest memories of going to a Gem Con was walking into the room where they have these incredible doll setups. Like everybody brings their beautiful setups, and there were 2 girls, women in their 30s, sitting on the floor with their Gem dolls, and I was just standing there, and I was like, oh my God, they're literally like 8 years old right now, and it was they were just sitting there, and it was like, it was so sweet. I wish I'd taken a picture of it because it was very, very, very sweet.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about JEM because obviously it's so important to so many of us, yourself included, but you have many other careers that you've done before JEM and since JEM. And I know you do you do voiceover work, you're an actress, you do music for other folks. You do like commercials. I know your songs have been on TV shows, and video games. I know you do all kinds of work. So my question for you is, how do you find that balance in all the different types of work you do? Are you more of a like, let's just see what's coming in and take what makes me happy? Or do you try to find balance of, listen, I have my own original music, which we'll also talk about, that I want to spend a good amount of time on, and then this is how I balance it with other people's projects?
It's wild. I don't even know how. You just find a way to prioritize it all, and the one thing about this business, although it doesn't give you any sort of security, like some jobs would give you, I wouldn't trade it for anything, because the journeys that I've gotten to go on, I mean, when I got to go to Dallas and I got to tour with this Pink Floyd tribute act that I worked with 2 of the most amazing backup singers that I've ever had the joy of working with. These 2 women, my soul sisters, my music soul sisters. We worked together for like 3 years in this incredible sights and sounds of Pink Floyd production. I will never forget it. It was, and those are the kind of crazy things that just like, here, you want to do this? Here, come do this. Here, one time, because I'm known as the speaking voice of JEM, and Britta Phillips is JEM's singing voice, but I got to be the singing voice of an actress in a film with Rob Lowe and Ice-T and all these people called Crazy Six. And I was the singing voice of the actress that couldn't sing, but she plays a singer in the movie, and I'm her singing voice. So it's just all the weird like things you get to do. It's just, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Sometimes it's a lot of living in the not knowing, which can be scary for people, but I kind of grew up that way. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I always land on my feet. and how fun to just get to sing and do voice work in all of these different ways. It's been an incredible journey. I'm starting to write a book about it because so many people have asked me questions, asked me if I would write a book, and I thought, oh, really? But I've heard it enough now that I've thought, maybe it is worth writing down and
So
letting people know the journey.
An autobiography, or is this more?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, just my journey, because it's been a wacky one. It really has. It's been wacky, and it's been long. I mean, I've been doing this since I was like 7 years old.
Wow.
So yeah.
So let's talk about your music, your original music that you write yourself, that you perform obviously for yourself. I know you have several albums, and I want to talk a little bit about those. What genre do you lean towards when you're doing your own original music?
Well, it used to start off very just guitar vocals, because that's such an easy way to write. And I feel like songs should stand up on their own, just melody wise. But I really love electronica. I love pop electronica vibe. And I started to teach myself GarageBand. And I suddenly, at my fingertips, I had tempos that I really couldn't play on the guitar, and I had access to sounds that, I would have to rely on a producer to. So suddenly it was like demoing up my own material. And so it's just been a journey. I love so many different kinds of music. I think it's tough when I'm sure a lot of singers can relate to this. If you love music and you're a vocalist, you love good music no matter what it is. I love so many different kinds of music, and I can sing so many different kinds of music, and trying to figure out my niche, it's like I still have songs that I've written that are not pop electronica that deserve to sort of be in a more acoustic environment. So I don't know, it's hard to nail me down in that regard, because I just, the songs just
more right, and then just see what group of songs you have and then go there when you're making
and usually it depends on, like, if there's somebody there that I've been working with that wants to do an album, and we kind of do it that way. So I'm sure my music is going to morph and change over the years depending on who I work with collectively, because I have songs that are more film and television soundtrack vibe, and ones that are more stripped down acoustic, simple, and other ones that are, I'm doing a dance remix album for a Hologram right now, which is like so fun. It's really fun. So there's that. It's like I don't want to have to. I just want to express myself with music, And I feel like because I'm not signed to a record label, I can really do whatever the hell I want.
Well, yeah, you're not limited. You don't have anybody telling you that people expect you to be this person, and therefore you have to make another album that sounds like
exactly. In fact, I would really love to do a cover album of my favorite 80s songs, just songs that I love, because I love synth pop, like the new wave kind of synth pop world. Love it. Like that's what I listen to. I'm sitting on the deck and I put it on my little Bluetooth. I'm listening to all kinds of, Howard Jones and
Howard Jones is one. Okay, you could rattle off that would give us a sense of, like, if you were to make that album right now, what would be
Howard Jones. I'm listening to a song right now called No Promises. Who is it even by? I can't even think of who it's by. Just real. I love melodies, so it has to be melodic. Something that even like you could strip down to piano and vocals, and it would be like hauntingly beautiful, like Nowhere Girl from the '80s. Beautiful melody, and stuff like that that I really love. So I don't know. I might have to do that at some point.
You need to.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your Hologram album, because I feel like that was a really special album, and it relates to your fans as well.
Yeah, I wanted to. It felt the timing was right to just sort of have a love letter to the JEM fan base that has just been so loyal and wonderful and smudgy and so loving and amazing and supportive, like so supportive. So it was my little love letter to them. And I try to put something on each album that has a little shout out to JEM. So it's on there. And yeah, so it's been a while though. It's 2017, October. No, was it May? I can't remember. It was 2017. So it's time.
Yeah.
It's time. Yeah, it's time to put the remix album out, which was supposed to come out last year, but we'll do it this year, hopefully.
So you still have to record it? Is it like written?
No, it's already, I have a bunch of remix producers that have already done remixes for it. So we're just trying to get it all as a collective and put it on something. I'd love to do vinyl again. That would be so fun.
A lot of folks are doing that.
Yes, I did pink vinyl for Holograms.
Yes, you did actually. That's right. And I think you had like a little download thing with it for anybody who didn't have like a record player.
Yeah. Absolutely, I do. Yeah, and the CD too. So yeah.
Cool. All right. So what do we have to look forward to? Like, let's say in the next year or two from you.
So, gosh, that's a loaded question, right? Because the way my life is like anything can happen. I would love to be doing more shows, meeting the fans, because I love that so much. It's a total joy. And they're always very interested and open to my next, if I have a new album or anything like that, which is so wonderful. I just did a behind the scenes interview for Project ACO. It's coming out on Blu-ray. So they had the original castmates and the producers, Richie Zito and Joey Carbone, who did the album. We did it via Zoom, which was so strange. But yeah, so we just did that. And I just did some voiceover for an album for this wonderful band called Hyperbubble. And back in the day, they used to perform the JEM theme song, and they have so they're huge JEM fans, and they're doing a documentary. And so I did a little cameo in their documentary recently that should be coming out this year. And and I just want to finish. I want to get my studio up and running. I'm having that's almost there, so that's a thing, because I should be doing more voiceovers in my own home studio. So I'm working on that, and then just getting my music out there and hopefully playing some shows again in front of people,
in front of
actual people, not cardboard cutouts. It would be so nice. Yeah, I think our little souls need some music and some interaction, and so definitely. Yeah, looking forward to that.
Where can people find you online so they can figure out when and where you're doing all of these cool things that you'll be doing?
Right. So the best place to find me is SamanthaNewark.com, and then it's got portals to all my gram of the Insta and my Facebook and all of that
gram
stuff.
Of the Insta, I love it. And I list all of those below so folks can find them.
Thank you. Thanks. Well. Yeah, it's super easy. Just type in Samantha Newark and you'll find me. I'm pretty easy to find. So yeah.
So you've had this amazing career. You've done so many different things, but I think JEM is clearly really important to you. And I would love to know, what have you learned from your JEM and the Holograms experience? What has it taught you in your life?
Oh my gosh, JEM has just given me, I will write about this in my book, but I feel so humbled and grateful to have been a part of the show. I never realized at the time, I thought it was a job, which it was. And it was such a wonderful time for me because I was 18. I was like, oh my gosh, I'll get my own apartment. And it started my independence. It has gifted me in ways that I can't even begin to tell you. It's encouraged me through even my characters and their stances on things through the great writing, because our lives mirror in a way. I'm in the entertainment business and I play a rock star and an indie manager or a manager. So that has just been such a through line through my life. And it's just encouraged me to keep going. And the fans have encouraged me to keep doing what I love, and that it matters and it means something to them. And that's an incredible place to start. And it's such a beautiful gift. And you just never know where your good is going to come from like this little English girl that was performing on these little stages and back in Africa, not knowing, just knowing that I love to sing and knowing that I love to be a part of this wacky world called show business. JEM has just been this incredible through line and it's more than a show. It's more than just a job to me. It's really touched my heart in so many ways, mostly through the fans, because the fans are just, I've just gotten to meet the most beautiful people, and so many of them have become my dear friends, like my inner circle. I met them through JEM. I mean, I'm very lucky, I'm very blessed, and I hope to keep giving it back. And I'm always amazed that JEM's like the show that just keeps on giving to me, but also to so many other people. It's just has this beautiful legacy. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought in that little studio in Burbank that we all would have, been doing something so special. It's really cool.
Yeah. So what would you like to say to your JEM family out there?
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys. I love being your JEM. I love being your JEM, and I hope I can always live up to it. She's a lot to live up to.
She has a lot to live up to, but yeah. She is you as well. So I mean, you're the one that breathed life into her, and really your career is a shining example of somebody who just decides they're going to do something and do it really well and keep doing it. And no matter what is
can't not do it. I figured out a long time ago, I can't not do it. I've tried to not do this show business thing. It never works.
It didn't work.
Yeah, I'm in it. I'm a lifer. I'm in it.
I hear you. So for everybody watching at home, thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. Please share this video, and please leave a beautiful comment for our beautiful guest Samantha, who has given us so much just in her career, but especially with her beautiful character JEM. Samantha, thank you so much. It's truly been an honor.
You too, honey. This has been so fun. You're lovely. This is lovely.
Thank you so much. And you'll have to please come back when your book is ready.
I would love to
about that, because I am going to be one of the first people to buy it and read it. And definitely come back and let us know.
Thank you. I would love that. I would love that. Show is over, Synergy.